Hey, y'all, welcome to Challenge Accepted. I am Frank, and I'm joined by Thomas today.
Aloha, everybody.
And we're going to be talking about the Acolyte, the season finale, and the series as a whole. Before we get too far into it, what's your immediate reaction from the season finale?
Well, before we do that, I was wondering, did you have a title for this episode? Because normally you usually get to watch it first, and then I come on, and I was still an hour late, and there was no title for it. So I was like, wow.
As per usual, they're slow on the titles for some reason.
Okay.
So I don't have a title for this yet either. By the time we're done talking about it, I'm sure they'll put one out way too late for us.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. So no title, episode 8. Maybe very much an example of what this episode is kind of about, at least for me. Man, I am having a really hard time determining what I liked least. This or Secret Invasion. And if that doesn't give you the hint as to how I felt about this, then I don't know what will, because I think we try to be very positive on Secret Invasion up until that finale. Less so, I think, for me on this show. But yeah, this just did not stick any type of landing for me. What about you?
Yeah, I think that the key difference on the two series is like this one, I think, had really cool fights and some really neat visuals. I feel like the budget for the special effects and whatnot was better on this one than it was for Secret Invasion. Meanwhile, over on Secret Invasion, due to the MCU,
what's crazy is the budget for this was less than Secret Invasion. That's the crazy part.
They did a better job with that budget.
Yeah, totally.
Over on the MCU, though, a lot of the I say that the weight of it, the fact that we knew these characters already, stuff like that, helped it out a bunch. Because I cared about Nick Fury. And we talked about during Secret Invasion, like, this isn't our Nick Fury, but I'm still invested because, it's this Nick Fury. That helped it a bunch. And the actors were all really notable. This one didn't have notable actors and stuff, and that showed. So there was both have very negative things about them. Different negative things in my opinion, though.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, other than Soul, Lee Jung-jae and Carrie-Anne Moss, you're right. Like, I didn't really know any of the actors. Well, I guess Daphne Keane. I knew Daphne Keane too. But let's just get into this breakdown because there's a lot of thoughts. We'll talk about, I guess, the episode. We'll do the rundown of the episode. And then, after, we'll probably go into the season as a whole. So I think there's a lot of thoughts as I was kind of processing it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of things as a season as a whole that I'm less of a fan of now. When we were watching as we were going through the season, I was hoping they would answer, but here we are. So yeah.
Let's go ahead and get that rundown started. I got your timer here, and go ahead and go.
Okay, so it picks back up on episode 6. We see that Osha's putting on the helmet. She's starting to, I guess, like hyperventilate or freak out. Chimera really looks like he's trying to save her. I was surprised by that. Now Soul starts monologuing like a villain over May, like, I'm going to tell you everything. Meanwhile, she uses Pip to escape. She's trying to escape. She takes the other pod. I don't know where she thinks she's going, but they go into an ice field. And then Basil, for some reason, sabotages Soul's plane, and then they both crash land back on Brendok. So that was interesting. From there, Vernestra talks to a senator who's kind of saying like, hey, we need to put you Jedi to a vote, and I know you want to push back against this, but like, I think this needs to happen. So there's already more incentive, I think, for the Republic to kind of keep the Jedi in check. So from there, we see that Osha and Chimera are going to go back to find May, I think. And they go on the ship. They decide to go together, and Plagueis is there. And then from there, they're all back on Brendok. Let's see. Osha forces... there's a battle between Chimera and Soul. Me and Osha kind of fight for a split second. All of this kind of happens. Soul confronts May, and then Osha sees it and basically is like, what? You killed my mom. Then force chokes him to death. Then takes his lightsaber, bleeds the crystal really fast. I thought it took way longer than that. And then from there, they decide to run away. The two sisters go by the tree. Chimera finds them. Vernestra and the rest of the Jedi show up. Yeah, and then they disappear. Soul and Osha go off. Vernestra has to talk to the counselor. Soul's dead. And then Yoda.
Yeah. That was a good job. I think you talked about Plagueis more than Plagueis was actually in the episode.
Right.
Which was unfortunate.
Times. Right. But I mean, I will say that was a positive. I was like, oh, that's cool. For those people who were like, Plagueis is in it. I think we were one of them at some point. Yeah, that was cool. We got a Plagueis sighting. So that was sick.
Yeah. This show is banking on a season 2. And I honestly don't think it's going to get it, but it's really banking on the fact that, we're going to be able to bring it. Like they almost wanted to tell you, like, I know, trust me, we're going to bring Plagueis and Yoda in. Mm-hmm. It's too late for that. You guys should have brought him in on this season, or I don't know, structured a show good enough to earn a second season.
Yeah. This episode 2, okay, just as a finale, there were so many questions we had through the season, and it seemed like some were just so obvious. Like Chimera was going to be the stranger, the bad guy the whole time. Right. There was no other choice, right? There was no other character that could have possibly been that. They should have gave us at least one other character, I felt like. And then we kind of get to see everything from the Jedi's perspective. Again, I think when I look back at the season, the penultimate episode 7, might be my favorite episode. It had the best story. We really get to see why the Jedi do the things they do. And so like, I really, really dug that. And I'm like, okay, what's left for them or for us to like really figure out, like what is episode 7 even setting up though, even though I liked it, you know what I mean? I knew all these characters were going to confront each other one way or the other, but now we're back on Brendok and I'm like, all right, okay, we're back here again. And they fight, but I don't know, other than other than May trying to escape and crash landing back on Brendok, like there's no reason for Osha and Sol to go there. And then Chimera, I don't even really remember the reason why they go to find them.
So Osha and Chimera go because Osha wants to return and save Sol from her sister, and Chimera's going to try to kill him. So like they're both going and like, we'll see who gets there first kind of thing. Right. That was the purpose of that. If I'm not mistaken, I think they accidentally landed on Brendok of all planets. I can't remember if there was a reason they were anywhere near Brendok. I don't think there was.
No, because they were out in space already. I thought they were already, like, I thought Sol was already taking May back to Coruscant. So it was like, how did they get back? By
chance, they went on the planet that, of all planets, it's like, oh, hey, this is on Tatooine now again, or something like that. Very odd.
Right. I mean, okay, I'll say that's a positive for the show overall, that we didn't have to be back on Tatooine, even though it's important and a lot of cool stories are there. It was nice to see a different planet. Different planet.
Some of the other things that kind of bugged me about this episode, Osha's full-on embracing of being Sith just was completely not earned. Her turn from good to bad, silly. And the fact that May was willing to just give up her memories, why? Why are you willing to give up your memories so fast for Osha to have a good life? A girl who you were fighting with a moment ago. You have never shown any sort of sympathy for your sister, and suddenly you have it all. So it makes the motivations make no sense in this series. It's terribly done. And it's either the script writing or the terrible acting that it makes it to where I couldn't care less what happens to the two protagonists of this series.
Yeah. I mean, facts. No, there's no disagreement for me. It just completely changes out of nowhere. And I get that they're trying to lead it up in episode 7 or even in episode 6, where Osha's curious for some reason. She puts on Chimera's helmet and it's like, ooh, let me see what this is like. And then I guess starts freaking out inside there, and Chimera becomes the nicest out of everybody, truthfully, and like really tries to help her.
Why?
But they completely flip-flop. And I understand there's this idea of yin and yang, right? Like when we look at the witches on Brendok, there's, the symbol's very reminiscent of the yin and yang symbol, right? But it's like, oh, okay, just because you're alluding to that, there's nothing really before, I would say, the end of episode 6 that makes me think that Osha should flip-flop. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It just seems like, whoa, absolutely. Here we are. So yes, I agree with you.
Yeah, it felt clunky, and it was like, we have to kill off as many people as possible, even like the one person everybody cared about. And then at the end, when we're like leaving things away, we look at what we have. We have a Vernestra with a very tarnished reputation. This whole time you've been saying, I don't like how the Jedi are bad guys in this. Mm-hmm. And my whole thing was like, they're not bad guys. They're doing good guy things for good reasons. It's just that you have to get a little bit muddy to sometimes like make the most good possible. And they kind of clarified that, like, even in this episode, Soul's very clearly saying, like, I did the right thing. May was dead. It was the best option to keep you safe in One Piece.
Yeah, and on track. Yeah.
On track, right? But the last shred of hope of that was destroyed when Vernestra's talking to the Senate, finally opening up about what happened, and she lies to them and blames it all on Soul. Yep. And it's like, this is Vernestra, which, you know, I haven't read the books. I've read some of the comics. She's one of the more important characters, or one of the more explored characters of the High Republic era, and you guys just made her a liar and tarnished her beyond any reasoning, honestly. It doesn't make any sense to me. She's going to Yoda because clearly she has a conflicted outlook, and maybe there's some redemption there, but we're never going to see it. I can't imagine this getting a season 2.
I mean, yeah, I'll be shocked if it gets season 2. Apparently the streaming numbers were good on it, but I don't know. The reception of this, I can't imagine, is very good. I'm cracking up because, gosh, this was wowee. But you're right. She completely just tarnishes his image, and she tarnishes, because we know the truth as an audience, it tarnishes her image. So it's like, okay, she just lied for lying's sake. There's no reason she needed to lie about that. You know what I mean? She could have said that there was a dark force user and he seemed to have manipulate people, or there was this force, there was these other force wielders who were doing some very dark things. And I think, my unit got caught up in it, and I think they misinterpreted the situation. I mean, so it's funny because she lies to the Senate, which is like very much like, I don't want to tell the Senate. We're going to handle it our own way. And then she, obviously they're alluding to that in the beginning of the episode with that one senator calling her out. Then she lies to the room of senators, and then they do the thing that she doesn't want them to do anyway. So the lie was for nothing. It was for nothing. Like, she didn't even need to lie in that situation to tarnish her reputation and Soul's.
In justification, though, I will say the show did button up one of the big plot holes that everybody was worried about. Why didn't they know about the Sith? Well, they don't know about the Sith because there was none, according to them. It was Soul that killed everybody else.
Right.
So they don't think it's Sith. They think it's a fallen Jedi. They specifically think it's Soul. And again, his reputation is completely ruined. But at least we know that part. At least that's why, Sith are not heard of. Yeah, although, what is she going to go tell Yoda right now? Who knows? Who knows?
Right. And then to have it like it. Okay, I appreciate that too. But you're right. Like, what could she possibly tell him? Like, and then if she tells him the truth in that situation, now when we get to the Clone Wars, is Yoda just covering up everything? I don't know. Does that now tarnish Yoda's reputation? It seems very, this is like Swiss cheese. There's so many holes everywhere, and that's not what you want from a finale. Like we said, this is supposed to be a mystery. And I listened to this whole conversation that Leslie Headland just did, these last couple of weeks with some big YouTubers and podcasters and influencers and stuff. And she was like, we really wanted to make it a mystery. It was 3 different mysteries. It was like, who's going around killing the Jedi? Who's the stranger? And what really happened on Brendok? And it's like, we do actually get those things, but it's done in, I think, the wrong order sometimes. And I think it also doesn't really do it in a satisfying way. So where you're like, yay, I got the answer. It's just like, wait, that's it?
Yeah. And one more thing I want to add to that is we don't care. One of the biggest problems, actually, when I was writing up my review for this, I was thinking back to the fact that, like, to this day, I watched them as a kid. I still care about Luke and Leia. I still care about Obi-Wan, Mace, all of them. I even care about Rey, Finn, and Poe Dameron. The movies were messy, but I liked the characters. I really liked Rey.
Right.
And
I agree.
I cared what happened to them. I could not care what happened to anybody in this series. And so when you're revealing the stranger, which, yes, should have been sooner, when you're revealing the stranger and all this stuff like that, I'm just like, yeah, but what's the big deal? Oh, Osha's now going to the dark side. Why would I care if she goes to the dark side? You haven't given me enough time with this character, or you haven't shown me that she's light in the first place. You haven't made me care about these characters in a franchise that's based off of kids playing with lightsabers, like that one right there, and pretending to be these characters, caring about these characters. They failed on one of Star Wars' most important aspects, making you care.
Yeah, yeah, about the characters. I agree with you for sure. Yeah, so you're right. The characters I did care about this season in a crazy way was Jackie, Chimere, and Soul. Indara too. I really liked Indara. I mean, all the starting Jedi, like I cared about them, but they killed them off so unceremoniously and so fast. It was like, okay, wait, am I supposed to? The only reason why I care about Jackie, for example, or for Indara is because I know those actors, right? Like
Yeah.
I've seen Death Eat King things. I know Trinity, like of course, but it's funny.
Basil's cute.
Yeah. But even that, it's just like they kill them all off. We don't really get any backstory. I don't really know what I learned from Soul except for he loved Osha too much, seemingly for no reason, and then it ruined his whole life. And the rest, yeah.
Just to jump in on that real quick, I don't know if he loved Osha necessarily. I think the key with him is he was inexperienced and let his emotions lead his decisions, and that's not the Jedi way.
Yeah.
I think that might be the lesson to take from him.
Sure, but
we just needed more time to develop that.
Well, yeah, but when he's getting force choked, he says, "I love," and then he gets choked. So that's where I got that from. Yeah, that's the only part where I got that idea. But you're right. Like, maybe he developed that now, and to your point, that's true. But it was just like, okay, sure. But was that enough for him to deserve getting force choked by the girl he saved? It was like, okay, sure. Let's just say that is that. When we start this episode again, Basil sabotages him. I was so thrown off by that. I was like, why?
All motivations go out the window in this show, man. Basil doing that is one of them. I was pulling at straws when I thought, like, you know what it is? He doesn't want him to kill May because he knows that Soul would regret it. And he thinks that maybe that's what Soul's about to do. I don't think that's what Soul's about to do, but sure, we'll go with that. Motivations in this damn series make no sense. One of the things that just like, seriously, that's one of your final shots was Osha standing on the thing like, I'm a Sith now. Oh boy, I don't mean to be talking shit about that much, but yeah. And then Chimere comes up next to her and like holds her hand. And I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? What are you doing?
Okay, yes, I have that in my notes. Yeah, and yes, that was the most. So did he not feel that way about May? Who was like the person who we thought was trying to be his acolyte the whole time, was very close, but like apparently he never felt that way about May. All of a sudden, because Osha turns, now they're romantic. That threw me for a loop too. I thought that was so strange. Chimere. Okay, so Chimere was one of those characters this whole season too that I really, really liked. I did end up.
He's one of the better characters.
He's by far, and he's a cool villain. The Cortosis helmet, the way he fights, the way his motivations are, the way he just kind of slowly maneuvers in the world. Like, he's a great villain.
He's a great villain, yeah.
We got not much other answers except for something that you and me predicted a long time ago. Those scars on his back are probably from Vernestra. He was probably Vernestra's pupil. And like, that's all we get from it. Like, oh, my people who fell to the dark side a long time ago.
Yeah. Probably the Padawan. He's probably your Padawan.
I know, so you're right. Yeah. But it's like, that's it. That's all we're going to get about one of the coolest characters in the show. It's like,
I know. And then we learn who teaches him all the dark side stuff is Plagueis. And all we're going to get is a little like
little hand creeping around the corner.
One of the most infamous moments from the prequels. I hate to get so ranty, but man, it's getting me fired up. One of the most famous moments from the prequel series is Palpatine speaking with Anakin about Plagueis the Wise. And it kind of is the first time Anakin's getting a sense of the dark side and seeing its value, and it's Palpatine really showing his masterclass in manipulation.
Yeah.
All dependent on that story. And we have him in this series. But instead of us giving us anything of substance, we get a little like, I want to hold your hand at the end. And it's just, why? Nothing is earned. None of this is earned. I do want to talk about some of the positives at some point, but yeah.
I feel like that's the thing. I mean, we're trying to throw, I think I got all my positives right out the gate. Like that was kind of it, but they flip flop, right? The not sisters. They, it is confirmed. Everybody's saying it. You guys aren't sisters. You're not twins. You're basically born of one being split into two bodies, which was the saying the whole time. The girls are literally
never
saying
explained.
Never explained. The girls say it in a rhyme. It's part of the reason, I guess, Soul decides that he doesn't need to tell Osha, is because without May, there's no reason to tell her that wasn't her twin or something.
Yeah, he said he couldn't prove it, which I thought was, and then he says, that's so light. Like, what do you mean you can't prove it? Have them read the midichlorians. That's such an Anakin thing. Her midichlorians are high or whatever. Just have them read it. Done.
That's a good point. That's such a good point, because you're right. They didn't need another being for them to know Anakin was a being made purely out of the Force because his M count was through the roof. Yeah, such a good point. Yeah, but at the end, like you were saying, okay, they completely flip flop. She grabs the lightsaber. She grabs Soul's lightsaber. Blue instantly bleeds Crystal. From my understanding of this, and I could be a complete novice to this, I thought you had to meditate over the crystal for like days and weeks.
And you had to put the hate into the crystal, not the hate being around you. Yeah, you had to actually drive it into the crystal.
Focus into it, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it was a cool moment because I've always wanted to see one of those crystals get bled, but it was like, it happened so fast. It's like, I could have waited for a different series for that to be shown, or I could have waited till, Kymir was standing over Osha, and as he's slowly like teaching her about, the way she can use the Force, she's holding this lightsaber from name any Jedi that's been killed throughout this show, and she's holding their lightsaber, and is now, her hate starts getting pumped into the lightsaber, and then it transforms, right? But it happens fast. Okay, right?
It happens real fast.
Yeah, they go to the tree. I was just going to say, they go to the tree though. And you mentioned this earlier. All of a sudden, they decide that May can't come with them and that her memory has to get wiped. I did not understand why May couldn't just go with them if the two others were going to escape.
That exactly thing, right? Because the idea was, well, you're going to tell the Jedi about everything. So why leave her for the Jedi? You guys are going to a place the Jedi can't find you. They wouldn't find her.
Yeah.
And you want one Sith? You've got two already. I mean, we know we know they're not listening to the rule of two because Plagueis is sitting back on that planet, and that makes a third. So you're not listening to the rule of two. So grab both acolytes. Like, it does not make sense. Plus, if they're separated people, you might want to join them. You're going to make a stronger whatever the hell she is.
Yeah.
There's so many holes. It's because
they want
to. They're setting up season 2 again. Whatever, and they're gonna make it to where like, oh, May's the good one now, and then this one's, and then it's gonna be the Yin Yang thing, and I think we could just have ChatGPT write season 2, and it'll be fine.
Right. Conceptually, it's a cool idea though. Like, one seems to be a being made completely of the light side of the Force. One is a being made completely out of the dark side. And by the end of the series, we see them flip flop for, whatever happens in the show. It's a cool concept. But if you're going to make something that strong, you really got to sell us on that. Osha was just pure love and always good and everything. And I didn't always feel that from her. And then likewise on May, there was always the first couple episodes, she's definitely trying to kill Jedi, but because we don't know what her motivations is, we're just like, she's just trying to kill to kill. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're evil. I don't know. I guess I never got sold. And maybe, we've talked about it before. Maybe it's the actor, its performance. Maybe it just didn't deliver. Maybe it was what was written on the page. It didn't come across, but either way, it just didn't really work for me. And I never felt like by the time they flip flop now with this finale, it's not earned.
There's definitely some blaming on the actor. I gotta say, again, we talked about how much I loved her as Rue in Hunger Games, but the scene where the sisters were talking in the bedroom, and I'm like, man, this is a moment. This is where one tried to kill the other and stuff. And out loud, because you know this, I do all my notes as I record me talking during the show. That's how I do all my notes for the shows now. That's why I'm able to get my reviews out as quick as possible, because I do very detailed notes now. And in my notes, it literally says like, son of a bitch, she's a terrible actor. You can see in the note, it just randomly, no, I'm talking about what's going on in the scene. And it's just like, I blurted it out. It's so bad.
Yeah. You're just like internal monologue was just now written on page. You're just like, okay.
I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, caught that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like you couldn't help it.
Yeah.
There was some very good actors in this though, and the dialogue was maybe weak for them, but they were still able to carry the emotion with them. Soul and Kamir, I think, are the highlights of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, let's talk about Soul in this episode because he was the one Jedi that was a part of that original four that was still alive. He arguably, to me, had the biggest or should have had the biggest amount of guilt. Indar was just guilty of like omitting some information. Torben was guilty of, reacting brashly because he really wanted to go home. Kilnaka really didn't do anything. He got mind controlled and just attacked his homies. But really, the person who did the most was just accidentally, I don't know why I did this still, but he just freaks out and stabs Ocean May's mom. And so, I think he definitely he did the worst thing and he should have had the most guilt. And yet I don't know, looking back, it's like, I don't know if I feel that he had the most guilt of it. You know what I mean? Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, does this finale, does it give Soul the ending that his character deserves and through the journey that he's gone through this season? And like, what are your take on Soul, I guess?
Wasted character. That's my take on him. The fact that he died means he gets zero redemption. Matter of fact, not only that, in death, his name is dragged through the mud. It's a tragic character. And this is a darker tone Star Wars, so maybe that's the case, but it's a shame.
Yeah, it's a shame. It definitely is. And getting killed by the girl that he saved and try to give a better life is just like, wow, that's pretty cold, And I mean, again, it can be a darker Star Wars and that's cool, but it still feels a little out of place, I think, for this show. Like it's a darker show, but it reminds me of Ahsoka. It doesn't remind me of Andor. You know what I mean? Like Andor was a heavy.
Ahsoka's so perfect. Ahsoka was such a good series. It's a shame that this gets compared to. It has to compete against something like that. That's like that's Star Wars done right.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's so true. And then I think of The Mandalorian and how I was probably harsh on season 2, and I'm like, man, like that was probably I was probably too harsh back then. Yeah. I would probably go back and knowing what I know now, change it all. Can I say one other thing about Vernestra?
Of course.
Dude. Okay. So we got the light whip in, I think it was like episode 6.
I called it.
Yeah. Sick. That was great. They don't use it again in the entire show. To kill one moth.
I know.
What?
The entirety of the light whip, the most unique weapon in this era of Star Wars. The entirety of the light whip is in the commercial for this trailer, this series. The entirety.
Yeah, that's so sad.
So stupid. Squeaks has been waiting for me to finish, and immediately when this is done, I was like, "You're good, man. Don't watch this."
Yeah, I
had to be honest. I hate to do that to him.
No, for sure. I mean, I think we'd be critical, but I think this would just like get Squeaks mad. So I think that is the right choice. Yeah. And I'm very curious to dive into the reception of everybody else. But like we said, wanted to just come out with our true thoughts and feelings about this. And maybe we're a little rough around the edges right now because we just watched it.
It's a reaction. Yeah, that's the point of this show.
Yeah, totally. But it just really, the more I think about it, I think the more frustrated I kind of get about it. And that's not the way I want to leave any show. I want to leave on just like, wow, like you still look at some things and you're like, yeah, that could have been done better. Or that doesn't really make sense. But you're like, you know what? I don't care because that was awesome. And I just don't have that feeling right now about this show.
I don't, but here are a couple things that I did really like about this. First up is the visuals. I think all the fight scenes in this show were really cool. Even this final episode, the way that Kamir kept like breaking his lightsaber in half and using that little dagger that he threw both, and then he was charging, and then the way that Soul was able to kind of echo everything off him, like that was a cool move.
That was.
Looking back at episode 5, some of the coolest lightsaber fights there are. And then again in this episode, a really amazing scene, something I've only seen in Star Trek, where they're flying in a ring of a planet and it's kind of bouncing in and out, and like that was visually very appealing and should have been used a little bit more. I think that's a better use of the budget.
Yeah, totally. You're right. That was a cool scene. Yeah, I was trying not to be like, it's silly how they got here. But anyways, it was a cool scene
Mhm.
because you have these two shells of ice that the ship is bouncing around, and you're like, that's a cool
Yeah.
idea that you can only do in space. I dug that. I thought that was awesome too. But yeah,
Yeah.
I try to think of what else. You're right. There's some moments where this is like visually very beautiful and like the setting is
Mhm.
cool and like certain things. But I'm gonna reference Screen Crush here. And Screen Crush is, I think, is a very positive show about a lot of things. Like they just try to
Yeah.
give you the facts on things and they try to find the positives in everything. And we know they didn't need enough hate. There was already enough hate on this show, right? And it's not
Mhm.
like we want to pile on either. But one of the things they were saying is that what's interesting is that House of the Dragon season 2 had basically the same budget as the show, as the Acolyte, and yet the Acolyte still feels like they're on a stage. And House of
Yeah.
Dragon makes you feel like they're in Harrenhal, they're in King's Landing, and that was just something I noticed, but they're for me, it's bouncing between, wow, that looks really cool and that's really beautiful. And this is a sick planet to, oh, well, that looks like really staged. So yeah,
It's
yeah.
too bad because a lot of this is filmed on Brendok. Brendok is actually Madeira. It's an island off of Europe. It's a Portuguese island.
Yeah.
I was telling you, it's the Hawaii for Portugal. Um, and
What
it's
do
a
they say
beautiful
instead of
place.
aloha?
Uh, Hola. Yeah.
There you go.
Hola, Telog. Yeah.
There you go.
But yeah, it's a beautiful island and stuff like that. And they Star Wars it up, the big bugs and whatnot, but
Mhm.
it's a shame that it doesn't feel like you're actually there all the time because of the way they forced really dark lighting on this area when it's that, but actually it's very bright outside normally and stuff. So
Yeah.
they didn't utilize their environment very well. The lighting was very much blues and purples at
Mhm.
times when it wasn't needed to be.
Right. Yeah, no, I think when they had those overhead shots, like there was that episode, I want to say 4, where it's the another Jedi team that's walking through the mountains, very
Yeah.
reminiscent of like a Lord of the Rings. And that's all beautiful. But then there's some parts where I think they made it a stage, like they brought it back to wherever they film. Usually I think it's like in London or it's in Manhattan
Yeah.
Beach in LA. And they have like, oops, excuse me, there's like the volume or there's like other stage that they do like the Mandalorian there and stuff. I feel like
Yeah.
you can tell when they brought it back to the stage. You know what I mean?
Witch's Temple, the Witch's
Yeah.
Temple, Soul's Ship,
Mhm.
and right outside of where Kamir was he's staying. Like those are
Yeah,
the
yeah,
three
the
main
cave.
sets. Like we saw
True.
those a lot. So
Yeah. Yeah.
oh, and the Jedi Temple, wherever Vernestra was. Like all that stuff was repeated quite a bit.
Right, right. Yeah. So it's just like, dang, you can feel when it's, they're on location and then when they're on a stage. So yeah, it's interesting, but there was a lot of visual. I will say I liked the score a lot in this show. I think they did a
Yeah, I did
fantastic
too.
job
I did too.
scoring everything, like from a sound and really trying to set the mood. It's fantastic. Like, it's Michael
Yeah.
Giacchino level stuff. Or Mike Williams, it's like, it's beautiful, or John Williams, but it's just like a beautiful,
John Williams.
but, but it, unfortunately, I think when you get in the scene, it doesn't always deliver on that. One thing I want to ask you about, because it was well called out and well documented all over the internet, which was that there was a few times Chimera was on screen, and what was playing in the background, that score that came in was Kylo Ren's score.
Yeah.
It was, I believe Leslie Headland said, like, you'll know why we use the score by the end of the show. And I still don't. Whoa, what are your
We
thoughts?
don't. I think the idea is it's going to be the Knights of Ren, or like he's going to be the Ren of Knights of Ren. We still don't know why though, because they didn't explain it. They just left a lot of shit on the table, which is a shame because he has such a dope look, and he looks like
He
one of the Knights of
does.
Ren. He looks like a predecessor to them.
Yeah. Yeah. The coolest
but they
helmet.
didn't.
One of the coolest helmets in Star Wars.
One of the coolest helmets, and then the fact that it like combines like the helmet and the gauntlet, and then he's just wearing basically like a samurai on vacation robe. That was a cool look.
Yeah.
And it's too bad they didn't take advantage of this to kind of like, hey, he's one of the Ren. He's the founder of the Ren or whatever. That would have been amazing to establish.
Yeah, at least even if they just said that while he was walking up to hold Osha's hand, like, I need to tell you about the story, or my last name of Red. That would have been like, that would have broke
That
my
would have
brain.
been great.
Yeah. Like, or
Instead, it's like, I got a crush on you.
Right. I want to hold your hand. But I'm like, what are they? Okay, they're looking off in the distance, but there's no, there's no context for what they're thinking or why they look off in the distance. And, I just kind of wish there was a little bit more information there. But I mean, it looked cool also. It looked beautiful again.
And I hate to be one of these bros. I always see these people that like to complain about the little things. And there's always well, why didn't they feel this one in the Force? I'm sorry. You're freshly to the dark side and you don't feel Darth Plagueis in a cave behind you? Like, that's nuts. Because, I mean, he would echo in the Force. He's that big of, he's able to bring somebody back from the dead. That dude can be felt. And the fact that, like, you don't feel him, Vernestra, as soon as she stepped foot on the planet, could feel Kamir. That's why he put his helmet back on. And
it's true.
You can't feel Plagueis 100 feet behind you.
Yeah, it's so true. What's funny about that? I feel like that was an argument over the internet all season. It was like, how could Sol not know it was May? How could Indara not know? And like there was so much of that. And when it's not explained in the show, it leaves the audience to kind of figure it out. And, sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. And then I think for this show, there needed to be a little bit more explanation or a little bit more dialogue between the characters to flush out some of those holes.
Even with the May thing, they did explain like her and Osha have the exact same metachlorine account, but they still didn't explain how they were born or stuff like that. There's supposed to be something behind that. There was some bold storytelling. At least they took a chance on like changing up how Star Wars tells stories, because oftentimes Star Wars is very formulaic. Because it works, they why not, at least they tried something new on this. It didn't work. And I'm hoping this doesn't scare away some of the next generation of directors and writers that Star Wars will embrace. I hope that they are willing to take those chances. But I have a feeling after the critical reaction to this series, they may fall back on the haunches, especially with the Bob Iger of it all, might fall back on the haunches and just try to like make another Skywalker thing.
Yeah, totally. It's just interesting. Like I found myself this whole season, especially now, like, why this story? Like you could have done anything in the High Republic era. You could have, they could have just been a straight up, Jedi were murdered. There's this villain. Who is it? And then gave us 3 different villains, and then if you're going to give us Plagueis anyway, why not have Plagueis, but then throw a Chimera in there or whatever. Right. I keep wondering, out of all the stories they could have done and things that people know, like, why not just expand on that? Why give us a different version of Vernestra? Why give us Sol and Indara just to kind of seem like the Jedi were shady? It turns out they were like kind of doing the right thing. Like even in the Rashomon episode, like it doesn't really, even though we get to see from Sol's perspective what he saw and like why he did what he does, it didn't really change too much. You know what I mean? Like that episode didn't really change too much about how we looked at episode 3. It still looks like May is bad. It still looks like the witches can be bad. It still looks like we now know how Mother Anastasia took over Torben, and like what the only thing that changed was like what he was actually seeing. So I don't know. Like, what are your thoughts on why do this story and not something more established in the High Republic era?
So I honestly think that this was going to be a test run on how much they could actually lean on the High Republic. Hey, let's try it out with a series first. They did books and they've done comic books. And I know that some of the comic books are okay, but I've heard pretty much negative across the board on that too. I think they're just trying something new. Like, let's try to make a whole new thing. And the decision comes from an era of Disney where they were kind of greenlighting some newer ideas. They weren't, and so that's what happened. Remember how we were getting like, oh, Kevin Feige's going to do a Star Wars movie. Oh, Taika Waititi's going to do like a ton of people.
Right. Yeah.
This comes from that era. And so kind of happy that a lot of those Star Wars movies got canceled all of a sudden. But I think if anything now going forward, if we're looking at how Star Wars and Disney's being ran now, if they use a different time period, we know they're going to be doing something from like thousands of years in the past, but I think Old Republic will be tapped a little bit harder because Old Republic has very well established lore. And so you don't have to make the lore. You could just use what already exists. And it's a fantastic world with characters that we already love. So it's easy to do.
Totally. I mean, Ahsoka was very much like that, right? Like we knew Ahsoka was still alive in this time period based on what we had seen in the Clone Wars and Rebels and all that stuff, right? So it was like, and as much as it was a mystery of like, is that Thrawn? You know, it's like everybody knew it was Thrawn, but still, that's what people
We were
wanted. You know
excited to
what I
see him.
mean?
We wanted to
We were
see him
so
in live
excited.
action. We were ready for the next version of him. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was just, yeah, it was interesting the characters that they chose and the way they use the characters that they put into it. So I think that's interesting. I'm still very much looking forward to the James Mangold, like the origin of the Jedi movie. I think that's going to be good. Now, what it does make me a little bit nervous about is the Skeleton Crew, because Skeleton Crew,
Hmm.
like, there's already been like some stuff leaked for that show. You like, if you really want to go out there, you can find there's like a Lego set that basically shows all the characters that are going to be in the show,
Yeah.
and you can already see that. But yeah, I don't know. This makes me a little bit nervous for that show, and I was very, very excited for the Acolyte.
Yeah, I was excited for the Acolyte because I thought that was aimed for me. It might have been, but it missed the shot. I know Skeleton Crew's not aimed for my audience. I know Skeleton Crew is
Mm,
going to be the teenage audience really is what meant for that one. So that's fine if it's not
mhm.
really if that one doesn't grab me like this one didn't grab me, I'm less upset about that because I like the dark side. I like Sith and stuff like that. So that's um it's a shame that that's what we were promised and we kind of didn't get it. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was so fun too, kind of going week in and week out, trying to figure out what Chimera is and like, is he a Sith? Is he not? And and talk about taking chances. It's funny that all we kind of get from him is like people like you would call a Sith or call me Sith. Like still doesn't
Mhm.
say he's a Sith. They could have went a million different ways with it, but it's just funny. I felt like that was kind of a safe choice in a place that they didn't need to be safe with it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
Well, guys, here's rooting for Old Republic and Darth Revan. That's my only
Yeah.
thing. You want to make people hype. You bring in, you show a little teaser of Darth Revan and the Old Republic, and then oh my god, it's gonna be lit. That's
Yeah,
such a
I
good
know.
story.
Yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. Man, there's just so much untapped potential here, and I think that's
Yeah.
maybe where our frustrations come from, at least for me. And yeah, there's so many things I just wanted to love this show a little
Mhm.
bit, anything, and yeah, it just it missed the mark in too many places. Do you ever think? Yeah, I mean, Jackie and Yord are done, right? Like we did with like
They're dead.
Daphne Keene is like one and
So
out.
done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Lee Jo Jae is out. Carrie Ann Moss out. Yeah. Yeah. Do they continue in this era? Like, is there a possibility
No.
for them to do another High Republic story?
I think they're gonna take a hard turn away from this era for a while. They're gonna have to let
Mm,
this cool down a little bit. Let the lore build up behind it. That's one of the best things about the rest of Star Wars, or Dave Filoni is pulling it in all the time. The whole Thrawn thing is that he could just be like, "Oh, Legends, 30 years of books. Let me just pull one of them and make it canon now." And for High
yeah.
Republic, they're like, "We have 2-3 years of books. Let's try to make this work." Let
Mm,
it keep building. Let you keep building the lore. Figure out, oh, this character is Vernestra was a character that people liked. You guys ruined her, but like let characters you like kind of form and then pull from those and don't
mhm.
force this to happen. There's no
Yeah.
need to. You have other things.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, man. Yeah, it's kind of like it reminds me of the last season of Game of Thrones, right? Like the show, I paced the books, and then because there was
Mhm.
no books for them to reference, they just mashed all these things in, and like the story ended up going all these different ways that
Yeah.
George R. R. Martin's like, yeah, I'm not doing that, not doing that, not doing that now, right? It's like,
I'm a big advocate for that. I just gotta say real quick, I'm a big advocate for that last season of Game of Thrones. I know it was real. Everybody loved crashing on that a lot, but I think they had a lot to do. I think it was pretty good, honestly. But yes, it definitely is different. You could tell when the book sources end, which is
right.
right after Jon Snow dies, and you're
Mhm.
like, oh, this isn't as complicated as it was beforehand because they didn't have to. Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah. So I think, yeah, maybe this was that situation as well. But yeah, this doesn't deter me from the next Star Wars show. I'm still on board. Like I said, Skeleton Crew comes out. I'm on board.
Mhm.
What are we getting? Hopefully an Ahsoka season 2. That would be great. Andor season
Yeah.
2. I think it goes without saying for most people, Andor is one of the best Star Wars shows that's ever come out. It's been so
Yeah.
dang good. I'm unbelievably hyped for it. It's like one of my favorite shows in season 1. So I don't think this deters me from Star Wars in any way. I still love it. Yeah, I just wish this one went better.
Yep. That happens. Luckily, we have San Diego Comic-Con. You're going to be there, and we're probably going to get some more announcements from Star Wars and alongside Marvel and DC. So we'll discuss those at a future time. But we might be getting excited about something new from Star Wars. That'll be nice to hear.
That'd be cool. I mean, April next year, Star Wars Celebration. So it's like another, or whatever it is, 9 months or that even, I don't know. It's under a year basically. Yeah. And then we're going to be getting a whole bunch of announcements. So
by then Andor 2 and Skeleton Crew are done. So they're going to have a whole slew of new things to announce at that point.
Yeah. So it's gonna be awesome. I can't wait for it. But this just makes me want to go back and watch Ahsoka and watch the early seasons of The Mandalorian and that kind of stuff.
Dear Disney Plus, do better, because what you guys messed up on is every time an episode of I forgot the name of the same show, Acolyte, would end, it would suggest Ahsoka. You want to make me depressed? You end a crap episode with like, hey, remember this bad boy? And I'm like, I don't have time to sit here and watch the best thing that you guys put out in the last 3 years, okay?
It's like, hey, once you get through all this broccoli, you can have chocolate cake. Remember chocolate cake? Remember how good chocolate cake is? And you're just like, yeah, I remember that. You're like, but you just made me sit through broccoli for half an hour. And
now I got to go talk on a podcast instead of eating some cake.
That's right.
Next up, guys, we have The Boys. Let us know if you guys like the live stream. I believe it's going to be up for a while. I'm not entirely sure how that one works for Instagram. But yeah, so we're going to be doing The Boys. We have House of the Dragon. I don't know if we're going to live stream the end of The Boys, but I think we should do for the House of the Dragon since it's in August.
Yeah.
That should be a blast. And
awesome.
Please let us know what you guys thought about this episode and leave a review for Challenge Accepted on all your favorite podcast platforms. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's going to help us reach more ears and reach the challenges, if you will. I don't know.
There you go. That works. That's a new tagline, guys. All right. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.
All right. Bye. Aloha.